Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. Today at the round table, we have the founder of Doctors of Running, Dr. Matthew Klein. We have Dr. David Salas and myself. I'll be hosting. I'm Nathan Brown. And today we are going to be continuing to go through questions that we got from a special mailbag that kicked off our 250th episode. We got so many questions from you all that we wanted to keep going through some of those questions. So that's what we're going to be doing, the three of us today. But before we get there, this segment is powered by and fueled by Scratch Labs. If you want to get 20% off your first order, you can use the code Doctors of Running. But we are going to be talking about what shoes we are currently testing and what is on our feet. So, Matt, I know you have a bunch of shoes that you want to talk about. So why don't you kick us off?
Can I give a shout out to Scratch really quick? Something I realized, and people... No? Okay, fine. I'll keep going. People in the comments might look at me like, you're an idiot. How did you not know this? And so I accept that. But I recently started taking gosh, why am I forgetting the name? They're like hyper calorie mix, the super
high carb.
Yeah. I mean, I've had it before, but I just finally started taking it long runs. Like pushing a stroller, obviously I've always made sure it had some kind of carbohydrate, but it wasn't until this weekend that I finally went, okay, you know what? I'm going to use the high, because I only run, our long runs are like 12 miles now. And this is coming from someone, I was pacing my wife through 30 miles of long runs, not like, a couple of years ago. So 12 didn't seem that much, but then I just didn't factor in pushing 55 to 60 pounds in front of me. The high carb mix made such a difference. And I was like, wow, this is so much better. And I feel dumb not going, the watch is not accurate because the watch has no idea that I'm pushing this. It's like,
sure,
using a lot more fuel than I thought. And so, also felt a lot better later. So that's, know what you're burning, know what your fuel needs are, even if the watch can't pick it up, because we're all different. You need to factor in, all the variables. So high carb, awesome. It's
nice.
Great. Anyway,
I've only been hyping that mix up for how long now?
Yeah. when Regina and I were doing her ultra stuff, it made sense. I'm like, it's 12. And then, a mileage or time doesn't necessarily mean, this is how many calories you need. There's other variables that go in that I was too dumb to consider.
Account.
Yeah.
Well, fun fact for you all, this has nothing to do with what we're testing right now, but if you happen to hear singing and wonderful music, it's because Jana is upstairs with our current roommate and they are watching Wicked. So if
I was hoping you were going to say Frozen.
No, it's not Frozen. I think
that's what goes on in my house.
Better.
Wicked's not bad though.
Yeah, so they're going to be listening. Wicked is on. So if you hear that, I guess you're welcome. But also sorry if you actually wanted to hear our conversation.
The song Loathing, that one hits.
Yeah, I've never seen Wicked, and I need to.
I saw it in theaters. You should see it.
I said to Jan, she's like, do you want us to wait for you? I was like, I definitely want to watch it with you. So if you'll do it as like another date night with me later, have fun tonight, watching. So
anyway,
Matt, what have you been testing?
Okay, so got a lot of stuff in. I do want to give a shout out. We already have a written review on the Saucony Hurricane 25. I will admit, I didn't really like this shoe when it first landed. I did like the fit was better. The overall ride is much better than the original. It's better transition, lighter. The power on PB it's good. It just felt too mushy. After 50 miles in the shoe, it's getting more responsive. I think it's because it's flattened down. I'm not getting as much compression, getting a little bit more bounce out of it. So it's just another one of those examples of, I'm glad I take a lot of shoes to a decent number of miles, and I'm glad I took this one. It does take some time to break in, and I'm glad I got that. But since we already reviewed that one, I'll have to do a maybe 100-mile update. The ones that I'm really excited to talk about is I grabbed a pair of the Adidas Adizero Primix Strung 3, and it is a different shoe. It's still massive. It still makes me worry that I'm going to rupture every single lateral collateral ligament on my ankle every time I turn. But completely different, updated foams. Version 2, I loved because it had so much lateral bias. It basically felt like a medial stability shoe. This one changes that, where midfoot kind of gets... They've taken away a lot of that bias, except for the heel still has a large curve. And I've noticed that this one, you got to use this one just right. Getting up on your toes really doesn't feel good. In fact, the plates actually, because there's a carbon plate and there's rods in this thing, you can actually somewhat see that getting up here doesn't feel as good. Landing rear foot, it just propels you forward. It's a great long run shoe. So this and the high carb mix made me feel great for the long run yesterday. And I will say, I'm going to give my wife a hard time. She always will do a race or a super hard workout. And then she wants to do an up-tempo long run the next day. And I'm just dying. So every little bit of help is appreciated. So excited to get more miles in this and get a full review, but it's different than the last version for sure. Other ones that I have I just did literally right before this, did a workout in the Takumi Sen 11. This shoe it may look the same. It does not feel the same as the previous versions. There's a new I think it's the light traction. I'm going to say that wrong. Outsole. Yeah. It's so much better, and it does grip. It's noticeably grips both the track and road very well. And the midsole, even though they say it's Light Strike Pro, so much softer and so much bouncier. This is probably the first time in the more recent Takumi Sen lineup that I'd be yep, this is that. It's super shoe, stiffening agent, really nice bouncy foam. Other foams weren't terrible. They just weren't as bouncy as I would have liked. And it felt a lot better. Not stable. I am rolling off this medial midfoot here. But the midsole and the setup is so much better, and I really enjoyed it. And the last one that I actually haven't worn yet, that I'm excited to and see what happens, is the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5. We did not test the Hyperion Elite Hyperion Elite P4 PB. I actually can't talk, but I'm really excited what people up in Seattle have done with this shoe. I am very nervous about how narrow this midfoot is. So I was, and this is me whining, I was hoping for this to be like the original versions, where at least with the Superfoam, where maybe it would be stable. Although the originals were just not bouncy, but we'll have to see how this goes because I've only walked in it. We'll see what running transitions do, but really curious. Midsole, the DNA Gold, I love. It was great in the Hyperion Max 3. I'm curious to see how it responds with this one. But yeah, that's what I've got in for testing right now.
Awesome. I've got one that I'll chat on. So you all have heard how much I've enjoyed the Rebel 5 so far. Mm-hmm. So I've talked about that a lot. So I recently took that, I don't remember if I've talked about this because it was pretty recent, but on a 14 and plus miler, and it was great. However, it was also soft enough where I definitely have some irritation to my tib post. And a little tarsal tunnel syndrome. I'm getting on the calcaneal branch, I'm getting a lot of zingers down there. It's been doing well. So I've modified my footwear selections a little bit. And the reason why I bring that shoe up is this other shoe that I've been testing more recently. Matt actually bought it for me and sent it to me, is the Adidas Evo SL. I would say there are a ton of similarities between those two shoes from a geometry rocker standpoint. Yep. It's almost like the Evo SL is this midpoint between the SC Trainer version 3 and the Rebel, because it's a little bit stiffer in the forefoot. The foam is a little bit firmer in the SL, but the only difference that I wish the SL had was the midfoot is really narrow. If they just widened that out, it might be like the literal perfect midsole for me. I love the amount of compression because it's just a little bit firmer and more responsive. I've just been really enjoying it. The other issue that I will say that I've had with the Evo SL is the tongue. It's super thin. It's non-gusseted, if I know right, but it has slid down. I did an 8-mile run with a 4-mile tempo effort in the middle, and it slid down, and I actually got a bruise under where it crinkled up on the bottom part. So I'm going to kind of try to keep playing with the lacing, but I'm hoping that can flesh itself out because I've really loved the ride of that shoe, and knowing it's $140, $145, right?
150. It's
150.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But it's below that one. It's below that 150. It feels like it performs better than that. And so I've really enjoyed running in it so far. David, do you have any?
Yeah, but first I just want to acknowledge that Matt put a crater in that posterior lateral heel of that Evo SL that he's holding up. That is a literal crater, my guy. That is
yeah, well, it's more that the posterior midfoot, but I of course, where this is set up, I yanked it off in a second, and I was like, do I just stop? And so I just ended up trimming it right off with a pair of scissors. I'm just going to keep running in this thing. I did get 100 miles in this. I just never did a 100-mile review because there were 1,000 100-mile reviews. I'm like, this is not special. There's enough comments on this, but yeah, I have cratered this section.
It's like The Last of Us was a shoe.
Yeah.
Sorry. Moving forward.
Yeah.
I don't have any of the physical shoes on me right now, but just finished up the review on the Rabbit Dream Chaser 2.0. Do you have that on you? That is actually kind of crazy that you just Did you know I was going to talk about that?
No, it just happened to be on the ground.
That's wild. Okay. This is live. Yeah, I actually do think it's an upgrade from the first, but I will say I was not a big fan of the first one. So
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty low bar to cross. I don't want to say that in a negative light. I actually did like the midsole and the ride of the shoe. I don't know if the upper really agreed with me very well. I think that's where most of my gripes with the shoe are. I think the fabric and the material run really warm, even though it's ventilated more. You can kind of see it almost looks like it's like hole punched through those different areas. And does that help? Maybe, but it's like it's already pretty darn warm. And the midfoot wraps really tight, and it almost feels like it's undercut on the lateral side. So I had this like pressure into my fifth metatarsal and cuboid. If I look past that, I actually did like the ride. I actually did think the geometry and everything else felt pretty good. The UTPU midsole felt fine. You know, like for daily training, it was something that I could see on my foot, genuinely. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of the carbon tracks. I still kind of have mixed feelings on that, but they're okay. Like I don't know if I love them, but I don't hate them either. Even the heel bevel felt fine for me. Like I don't know. I don't crash on that heel as hard as you. So
It's not in the right. The bevel is facing the wrong direction. It's on the medial side. It needs to be on the lateral side.
No, there's a cutout on the medial side. It's not biased to the medial side. It's very central.
It is. Yes, there's a cutout and it's beveled toward the medial side.
Okay.
Which makes me go, and I haven't been able to run it.
But it's the upper on that shoe. I think there actually is promise to it, and I think it could be a daily trainer. I think 160 might be a little steep for it, if I'm being honest. But for the right person, maybe. But I don't know. Like I feel like I'd probably see it more in the 140 to 145 range for where it currently is at. But that shoe, the review just got out for that, so by the time this releases, you'll be able to read that and see my honest thoughts on it. And coming up will be the Solomon Aeroblaze 3 lightweight trainer.
Before we go there, I think I wanted to add something to the Rabbit. I think that shoe, and I love a lot of Rabbit stuff, but I just don't think they've hit on their running shoe yet. Like if you're somebody who loves
so
Rabbit,
brand new to it, it's like
it's just not good yet. Like and maybe there's good things about it, but it just doesn't compete with what's going on in the market right now, and it's got to catch up, or like they got to figure something out, because and aesthetics is very subjective and people have their preferences. But even from that standpoint, like the second version, I don't think is as good as the first version. Like the first one kind of had a very clean aesthetic to it. This one has this. They have the same colorway. Do they have the pure white one? Because there's like the all white one. Okay,
you could buy
the one that we have is just faded and like that fade from blue to white. And I don't know. I just think that it's right now it's not hitting on geometry. It's too heavy. It doesn't have any pop. It's just not that. And I couldn't get mileage in it either. It was hurting my feet. So
for like easy mileage, I felt like, because it was 10.5 ounces men's size 10. So like going men's size 9, you probably take a half ounce off that. That's about comparable with a lot of other daily trainers.
It felt heavy though.
Okay. I don't know. I didn't think it felt that bad. Like once I got my mileage on it.
Yeah.
But it was the upper. The upper was kind of the deal breaker for me.
Yeah,
I just wish that was better.
Yeah.
Across multiple ways.
Yeah.
But
it'll get there. I think they'll get there if they keep going at it. They'll find something that's.
I will say the high country, the trail model actually looks pretty nice.
Okay.
From what I can see, it looks pretty solid. It almost looks like a Hoka Challenger. But yeah, I wouldn't mind trying that at all. I think it looks pretty nice. And there was that group of people that used it from rim to rim to rim. Did you watch that video on YouTube?
Oh wow.
So
good for them.
For what it's worth, a group of people ran in it across the Grand Canyon and back. So, and they all lived to tell the tale.
That's good. It's really good. All right, you can move on.
Klein had his hand up.
I'm interested, certainly curious to see what they're doing with the trail model. I almost wonder if they'll have more success with that. I'm not sure why I'm saying that. I just got instinct.
I know.
I'm a little concerned with their verbiage in the advertising, going, "Oh, we put a carbon fiber plate, more bounce." I'm like, we've talked about this, that like carbon fiber plates add stiffness to a sole. Like if you really want bounce, you got to use the right midsole materials and that have the right resiliency and compression to them, or compliance to them. So I just want to go like, No, and I'm not being to be offensive. I gave Mount Coast a similar hard time about the verbiage with pronation. They changed some of the stuff on their website, which is great. I'm really happy about that, and I'm curious to see where they go.
That's
but
cool.
I just want to, if anybody from Rabbit listening to this, I'm wearing your apparel. Like my students make fun of me, like the high country short sleeve or long sleeve is like literally the only thing I wear in clinic or teaching.
I have like 3 of them hanging right there. I can see them.
But I think be careful. I understand marketing. Be careful with your verbiage because we do know, like, if you're going to use that term, have one of the new resilient foams, but just market appropriately. Don't get on the carbon plate hype. It's a piece of the puzzle.
Perfect. All right, let's move into this next shoe. You got.
So I still have yet to do my maiden voyage on it, but it's fun. I've put them on. It's just kind of like it's like a lightweight, kind of gently rockered shoe. Mm-hmm. I know for Klein, the midfoot's a little bit narrow. So we'll see how that goes, but the foam actually does feel pretty lively. I'm excited to run in it. I really am. I just don't have any true thoughts on it, but that's what's on the docket for this upcoming week.
I would love. Yeah, go for it, David.
They have really changed their midsole game since the first Salomon road shoe I've tested. It was the Salomon Sense Ride 2, I think. And that thing I couldn't even wear for a full day of work. The midsole was that uncomfortable. And this is a huge change.
Oh, yeah.
And that was probably
Energy
6
Evo
years
foam
ago.
Or whatever.
Yeah. So it's pretty great. Matt, what were you going to say?
The Salomon Aero Glide is like one of my top shoes. It's fighting the Keanu right now for top shoe of the year because of how good the midsole feels. But
Keanu.
I'm gonna get another comment from Peter and everybody else on here going, "Oh, I can't." Like, all right, I'm just gonna not talk.
It's wonderful because Matt cannot pronounce Keanu. And
to be fair, I can't pronounce Andrea's name correctly either. So
true.
That's true.
But this is why one of the things we love about this is just kind of interacting with random people that become kind of friends through this whole thing. And somebody shared like a Google pronunciation of Keanu so that Matt could learn. And it didn't work clearly. So educational theory, we need to apply.
I reposted it too. Still can't do it.
You got to figure it out.
Anyway.
If you're looking to crush your next training cycle and your next race, you might want to have the right tools in your tool belt to make the right decisions within your training. Stride has a dual pod system that allows you to train and get feedback based on power metrics, foot path guidance, and it also accommodates and is able to take into account a lot of the things that may happen on any given day, like different terrain and hills or wind. You can take the guessing game out of some of the decisions that you need to make with your training and also be able to really dial in what race day is going to look like depending on what the situation of the day brings, whether it's a very hilly course or if you're going to be facing a big headwind. So if you want to dial in your training and have a ton of success on race day, adding a tool to your tool belt like Stride is going to be able to help you make the progress and make the success that you want. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about more of the questions that we've gotten from you in this mailbag. And our first question comes from Gabriel. And he says this: soft shoes usually cause me plantar fasciitis. It's interesting that soft shoes like the Noble S5 and Glycerin Max doesn't cause me pain. I was wondering if my pain could be related to some of the foam components that other brands use, such as the foam used in the Hoka Mach 6 and the Mach X, the first version. So they're wondering, is it not so much about the softness, but is it about the actual compound within the material? Who has thoughts on that?
I can go. This is a really important concept that soft is perception. So, and different people will things soft, firm, and what you have to realize is a lot of that comes from not only your nerve endings, your proprioception, a lot of the stuff in your body, but also how you are reacting to the shoe and how the shoe is reacting to you. And every foam has a different compression rate. So we talk about compliance and resilience, but it's also how quickly does that compress. That can vary. You can have 6 different foams from different companies that say, "Oh, these are all soft," and people are going to rate them differently because of that. So I'm not really surprised. The Glycerin Max doesn't fully just to surprise me. I found that pretty bouncy in the heel, like soft in the heel, and then firm up at the forefoot. David, you had a very different experience with the Glycerin Max, right?
Hurt my foot.
Yeah. So depending on, yeah. Yeah, it's true. So and that was
the way that went is like, you had a different experience, hurt my foot, and move on.
That was one of my top shoes of the year. And then David's like, no, it was great. Yeah.
It was soft,
Ted
right?
Lasso.
Yeah.
Was it I have seen Ted Lasso.
I was trying to channel my inner like coach.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's personality.
So, depending on how you load the shoe, and I will say the geometries and the foam, even though it's like relative, like whatever, it's going to be different in the Mach X 6 and the Mach 6 and the Mach X. So there's a good possibility that either geometry, stiffness, and other factors are playing into this, because that also affects perception of softness. But that totally, it may not just be the foam though.
What was the stack on Mach X, the first one?
Oh my gosh.
Because both of those are lower than Nova Blast and Glycerin Max by a considerable margin, I believe.
Don't remember.
Because there's other factors besides softness. Like that's where I was kind of going with it. Like it can be a soft foam, but if there's not as much of it, it's going to decompress a little bit less. You're going to have a little bit more ground feel. The shoe's just going to run a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. David, you thought the Glycerin Max was like wicked soft, right?
Totally, man. It was crazy.
See, and I thought it was actually really firm. Like I felt like it didn't
I don't
give it
trust
all.
anything you say when it comes to firmness and softness of shoes, though.
Yeah,
we disagree completely. Like, I mean, let's go back to the OG Bondi X debate.
X, he thought it was like
I thought it was so soft, and you thought it was firm. Yeah. So I think this is another one of those situations where shoes like that can be different. What I was going to say about this question was that I've had similar experiences in certain shoes. So do you all remember? I think it was called the Wave Neo collection from Mizuno. So it was like the sustainable line of shoes that they came out with. They were kind of more like concepts that were a bit more expensive. Mm-hmm. Every time I ran in any of those shoes, I would get sharp pain through my arch. Like it would be my first run in that shoe. I'd get sharp pain at like mile 3. And then I'd go run the next day in something different. I'd have no pain at all. And those weren't even remarkably soft, but it's ones that are similar to that in stiffness that have that I have an issue with. When I say stiffness, I mean like midsole stiffness, the compression. And another similar one for me was one of the iterations, I think it was version 4 of the Float Ride Energy from Reebok. So that there's this range of midsole stiffness that I end up having issues with. And I don't know if it's so much about compliance as it is, maybe it's, again, that rate of loading, maybe the vibrations that go through foams and how that interacts with my tissues. I'm not sure what it is. But I definitely have found a pattern with shoes that fall into that category. Actually, the Salomon Aeroglide 3, that one is that same amount of stiffness for me in that compliance. So I've been very hesitant with that shoe. I haven't been taking it on longer stuff, just shorter things, because I'm weary of it kind of aggravating some stuff. So
I feel like the Dream Chaser is like kind of similar too.
Yes, which is why I don't like it.
It's like that slightly 100%. Compliant, but it's not mushy soft. Like there's still just a little bit of resilience to it.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that actually. I get it. Yep. And you know what's funny is I actually like that type of midsole.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's funny. Like as you were saying all those things, I was like, those all sound like things I like.
So to answer Gabriel's question, I think it could be related either a small piece to the foam, but also the geometries, how the shoe moves, and there's a lot of other factors. And plantar fasciitis is challenging, right? Because we've done episodes on this with how difficult understanding why it happened or all this kind of stuff. And there's certainly some risk factors, and certain people will have more so than others. The Mach X one I didn't like because I just felt it jammed me over the medial side, which may increase the risk for certain people and may not for others. So yeah, just kind of going, all right. And there may be certain brands you just don't get along with. And that might just be the case because however the geometries in your biomechanics are. But I think it could be foam, but it's probably more of a combination of things.
David, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it all sounds good.
Great. Well, let's move to our next question. This is from Laura. And this is what she asks. What do you think about shoe shelf life? For example, I love the Saucony Tempest, as suggested by Andrea, they said. But I'm wary about the Tempest 2 based on your review and trying them on at a local store. I can only find the original Tempest on Amazon. Do you think it's okay to buy it and run in it, or does the shoe degrade over time in storage?
That's an interesting one.
I have a story. But
Yeah,
David,
let's start
go
with
for
that.
it.
Oh,
Well, I know like in sneaker culture, like some of the foam can decompress over years. And so let's say if it's a classic Jordan or something and someone goes and buys it and it's, several years old or even more, like sometimes you put your foot in it. If you put your foot in it, like if it's not a display piece, and like the foam will just like degrade or break or like kind of, it just doesn't quite hold its life after a certain amount of time. Supposedly, though, and I remember actually Saucony talking about this a little bit, that their Power Run PB, at least at that time, was supposed to be more durable and actually have a decent shelf life. But that number, I don't actually know what that number is. But I feel like it's almost safe, like after 2 or 3 years, which it has been at this point. Probably don't make that purchase if I'm that person. But I wish there was kind of a hard and fast rule on that. But like foams do degrade; they are materials like anything else.
mm-hmm.
That's what I got. What about you, Matt?
I would say that we have a better idea of a lot of the EVA based midsoles. Those break down, and I would say after about 3 or 4 years from production, that's where you're not going to have the same cushioning properties for sure. The new foams, because they're all blends or P, but whatever, we have no idea how long those last. To be honest, they're so new. There's really not that information out there. So don't know. And Power on PB, it might last a decent time, and it's not a bad idea because I've seen those Tempests on Amazon because I also look at those occasionally, even though I don't buy them. It's not a bad deal. So the worst that happens is you try them on and you go, oh, okay, test it first. But yeah, everything breaks down. And I would say even with some of the newer foams, once you get past that like 3, 4, 5 year mark, I would be a little hesitant on that. I think there are some decent alternatives out there right now. Adidas has the Supernova solution too, which I think isn't as stiff and definitely is softer. So there's some other stuff out there. You can't trust the cushioning because, like David said, it breaks down. So my story is when I was working at Fit Right Northwest, one of the really great running stores that I started my running understanding in many years ago. Rest in peace to that store, as they closed some time ago, but they had a great place to learn and great place to start. There was a pair of Nike Mayflies in a box, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And that was long after, even at that time. This is years ago. That was long after the Nike Mayfly had come out. And the Mayfly, for those who don't know, was the lightest shoe at that time. And this was during, I think, the 2000s is where that came out, and people loved it, but it was only truly meant to last for a marathon. It was not like 100 kilometers, I think was what they said. And then it was supposed to fall apart. And there's a lot of times some people took them longer, some people didn't. But that was probably about 10 years after. And there was a pair in a box. And I was like, and I remember asking whoever was in charge, like, can I run in these? And like, yeah, sure. And so I took them out and I was super excited because they were size 10. I'm like, I know this shoe. And I made it about a half mile before the sole started coming off.
I was going to say I had a similar experience with an old pair of Nike Streaks.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it was a good amount of time after the release of it. And
so
decided to just try it on one day and the heel started just coming off.
You're like, yep. And so that's what happened. And I felt really bad realizing they just destroyed a pair of like pristine Nike Mayflies. But
I think that there's a reality that this would be a great conversation with a material scientist who really understands the stuff on another level too, to help us understand what are the changes that happen with time, but then what are the other changes that happen with storage space. So where they're being hanging out, is it super humid? Is it really dry? Is it hot? Is it cold? Like those things matter as well, because there's going to be fluctuations in the foam. Sounds like y'all have something to say.
Yeah, well, in both of our cases, it was the outsole that came off with you, Matt?
No, it was the midsole that literally started to like
that's
away.
Different. Okay, because for me, I was going to say I think it was an adhesive issue, that the adhesive started to give way and the outsole, like the rubber, just started coming off.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And we know, by the way, and even shoes that are new, that when they're flown over from China or Vietnam or wherever they're made, the temperature extremes that happen in the airplane can totally change how they feel, even if they're brand new, which is why for those who are running, I have this colorway and it feels totally different than this other color. It's probably because there was a different weather system that the shoes experienced on the way over. So yeah. And Nathan, you're totally right.
Weather system is every shoe that's delivered to me in the wintertime. They go through a weather system.
Yeah.
They just hang out outside my door for
You guys
a day.
don't have real winters.
Yes, unlike y'all in Santa Barbara with your very basic pesto pizza. All right, we're going to move on to our next question. We got to move on. We can't dwindle. All right, so we're going to get this question from Tim. Tim says, I'm a bigger guy with a widest foot training for racing 50 and 100K trail races. Pretty technical terrain in New South Wales, Australia. I'm old and slow. This is his words. Sorry, not mine. I'm not saying this about Tim. This is Tim saying it about himself. I'm old and slow, and as best I can, comfort over the long run is what I'm looking for in a shoe. Trying to understand the dynamic between a high stack shoe with, say, an average foam versus a low stack shoe, but with a really high quality foam. Will the effect be the same between those two? And if yes, what should his go-to foams be? What kind of foam should he look for? Just to give you some reference on what he's been running in, loving some of the higher stack stuff lately, Salomon S-Lab Ultra Glide, Mafate X, Brooks Caldera 8, Speed Goat, etc., and defaulting to high stack, but he's wondering what he's missing out at with the lower stack, but trying to get just as much comfort out of it. So what are your thoughts about the interplay between high and low stack and type of foam?
It's a loaded question. But I think like with everything, I mean, there's so much individuality to it. I will say he did use the words I'm loving. I'm looking at it right now. If you already are loving it, I don't know if I would rock the boat much. But a lot of these foams, like Klein was saying earlier, unrelated to this question, but they're blends, a lot of them now. And so a lot of them are integrating different Peebo blends and stuff like that. And I believe the S-Lab Ultra Glide was supposed to have some kind of a Peebo blend in there where it wasn't the entirety of it, but there was kind of a responsive kind of nature to it. And same thing with the Mafate X, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So like some of these foams are making their way into these higher stack shoes anyways. But if you were looking to have kind of something a little bit more lower stack and nimble that had kind of a more life to it, you do have a couple of options out there. You do have like the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite Trail, which is a carbon plated trail all-terrain model that does use the Nitro Elite foam, although it's not as good for technical terrain that I'm picturing is going to be in Wales. I'm picturing like wet, sloppy rocks. I don't know if it would do as well in that situation, but it exists. And then you also have the Catamount from Brooks also as well, decent traction on it, a little bit like it's a responsive foam, but you kind of have to load it to get it. I feel like it's not quite as bouncy right out the box, but I don't know. I feel like the options he already listed are already pretty good. And I've run in the Mafate X, like it's solid, and same thing with the Ultra Glide. So
I feel like,
especially if you're looking at 50K to 100K, I feel like comfort's key. Like if you're going that far, like pick the shoe that's going to work the best with your foot and mechanics over any kind of responsiveness advantage you may gain.
And if you're on technical terrain, you probably want the shoe that just makes you feel stable too. So who really cares that much about the amount of stack? I'm just trying to think of the category of shoe he's talking about, where if you were to exchange these high stack shoes for something lower with a higher level foam, I'm trying to think of what shoes may be living out there, because most of the ones that I think of,
Tectonics, Pulsar 4,
but I still think of those as pretty high stack. It's not like they're lower stack shoes. Like I ran on the Tectonics.
It's lower than the Ultra Glide and Mafate X, though.
Sure. I'm with y'all. I'm with you on your answer, David. I have nothing to add. Matt, what were you going to say?
I would bet money, and I might be wrong. Tim, let us know, but that he's talking about like shoes like the NN normal stuff, and hopefully I said that correctly.
I think it's just normal.
Maybe it's just normal. Sorry,
just the two ends.
Just normal. Those are kind of more moderate to lower stack height, but they have some nicer foams in them. And I think for people that are really good on their feet and maybe lighter and are used to that technical stuff, maybe that like your Kilian Jornet, who I believe that's his company, right?
Normal? Solomon.
No, he doesn't.
He's not Solomon anymore?
No, he's. I believe somebody correct me, but I believe
I don't follow trails as much anymore. I'll get it for you.
I might be wrong, but I know that he is one of the ones who, like, for the Western states, for example, was wearing a fairly, by today's standards, a more moderate to stack height to lower stack height shoe.
He's
by
with
today's
Normal.
standards.
Normal.
He co-founded Normal.
He co-founded
Yeah.
it. Okay.
So I
didn't know that.
totally get that. So, but you need to find the shoe that's best for you. And I think a bigger dude is going to naturally compress your shoe more. So if you have a softer, more compliant, resilient foam underfoot, you're going to smash that thing. And I think that may not be the best over 50 to 100K because you're looking for comfort and efficiency and you're not used to lower stuff. So things you're missing out on is a little bit better proprioception, maybe a little bit more work at the foot and ankle, which may not be the best thing you want over 50 to 100K. If you want a shoe like that, it's best, I think, to introduce for like shorter stuff, or we're using it as a foot strengthening tool to like go, okay, I'm going to use a little bit less shoe, use my foot and ankle a little bit more, but it's not something that I would say a lot of people are going to be good at for a long, long distance. Especially with talking about size and going, you're going to compress the shoe more. So you may find it actually firmer and less comfortable. I might be totally wrong, but, and just clarifying that, but I don't think it's more of like I'm missing out. It's just different loads through different tissues. You got to decide, is that comfortable for you? Can you maintain that to 50 to 100K? I don't know the answer, but you're going to have to ask yourself that.
I will say too, like looking at midsoles and whatnot, if there truly is a feeling of quote unquote missing out, there is a shoe on the market now that is Max Stack that has quite a bit of bounce to it, and it's meant for ultra distances, and that's the On Cloud Ultra Pro. I feel like that might not be a bad pivot if you feel like you're kind of missing out on kind of a newer generation type of feeling, because that definitely gives you that. But it's tuned for ultras. Like I would not want to run a 25K in that shoe all out. Like, but if I was running 100K, I think that might be my shoe right now. So that's not that I would run 100K. That's so far. Kudos to you, man. That's like, that's a lot of running.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's move to our next question. This is a question from Maddie, who is in kind of a local running specialty store. And this is what she says. She says, as an employee at a run specialty store and as a regular viewer of your videos, I've learned a lot from your shoe and biomechanics breakdowns. Sometimes, though, it can be tough fitting customers who never wore premium running shoes. What are your top tips for helping them and all customers understand concepts like stability, rocker geometry, midsole foams, and general underfoot feel? Any tips and tricks for bettering my skill set as an outfitter? I'd love to explain these concepts more clearly during fittings and also pass those insights along to my coworkers. Thanks to the entire team at DOR. Love listening to your pod and on my long runs. So thanks, Maddie, for that. That's kind of you. I'll go first on this one if y'all are okay with that. Mm-hmm. When I heard this question, my brain immediately went to just physical therapy.
Yep.
And every single person that comes into the door to receive physical therapy services is going on a different type and amount of education about why they're in physical therapy. Some people just want to be told, hey, you just got to go do these couple things, change this about your daily habits, go do these exercises and go. And they don't care at all about the why. Some people really need to understand the why behind these exercises if they're going to buy in. So I think the same applies to fitting people for running shoes. You don't need to have every single person coming through your store know everything that you know about the running shoe that they're putting on their feet. That is probably serving you more than it's serving them. Like, give them what they want and what they need in terms of information. And that's not giving clear advice, but I do think that is the kind of posture you should have, is what does this person want from me in terms of the amount of education about the shoe? Your job's to be the expert. Their job is to understand what they like and what they don't like, not because they understand the shoe geometry, but because they can tell what they like on their foot. So you can be pairing them with a shoe, asking them what they like about it, asking them pointed questions that help you understand, do they like rockers? Do they like soft foams? Do they like a wider base? Like when I was with Jana, we were trying on just shoes for walking around. I gave her the Bondi, and I gave her, what was the other shoe? Oh, it was the Tempest. And she kept talking about how it feels like the shoe is just too wide in the back. So these really wide flared shoes, she doesn't like those. So I tried to find shoes that didn't have as much flare. I didn't explain to her sole flare. I just helped her understand what she did and didn't like about the shoe and gave her ones that she may like better. So that was my initial gut on this question, was more about being focused on not teaching them everything about the shoe, but just using your knowledge to help pair them with the right thing.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's so easy to overwhelm someone with information,
Yeah.
and that is not our role in any shape or form unless they want it.
Yeah.
And I think I immediately thought of being a clinician and any kind of like recommending of shoes in the clinic. And a lot of times I don't even jump to it unless
Yeah.
it's something that kind of gets brought up. But I think it all starts with listening, just really listening to kind of what
Yes.
their wants and needs are and not kind of taking that step forward and kind of it like you're there to kind of help guide them towards the decision. And ultimately they're going to give you the information that kind of helps drive that, not the other way around. And I think just being a very receptive individual and listening, because like Nate said, you're the expert and you kind of, you know what's on that shoe wall and you kind of know the rough geometry, you know what's plated, you know what's not, you know what's rockered, you know what's not, you know what has new foams, you know what doesn't, right? Like they don't need to know all of that, and just kind of narrow it down based on what you're hearing when you ask what they want. And then from there, it's like, okay, like they don't like rockers, they don't really like plates, but they want a shoe with a little bit of life to it. Okay, I have a Hyperion Tempo here, or Hyperion. I have a Cyclone over here. Like I have, like, you know what I mean? Like you can kind of start to categorize certain shoes based on what they're wanting and needing. And then from there, they can try on things and be like, okay, I like this one. This one actually does fit. And then when they do put it on, it's like, okay, this feels a little tight here. Okay, let's find something that has a little bit more space there.
Yeah.
And kind of go from there. So I think it's just so easy to overwhelm someone with the different components that goes into shoes. And there's so many things that can go into shoes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as we know, so that's my take on it. I think listening is the greatest skill set you could possibly have in
Yep.
any kind of people facing position, because ultimately that's going to drive you toward what people want and need.
And then if they turn to you and say, "Why do I like this one more than that one?" That's when you can give them a little bit of an answer. And you don't give the technical language. Give them at the level that they want it at, you know? Like, you know, this shoe's a little bit more narrow. This one's got a softer foam. You don't need to say, "This one's a PIBA-based foam with a higher compliance." Like, that's not the language that they need to know to be able to enjoy running. So, you know, we talk very technical on this podcast and through Doctors of Running because the people who come hang out with us are here for the technical stuff. So again, we're trying to match like how we speak to the audience that we're talking to in the same way, like David said, listen to them and then respond with the language and information that they're looking for. Matt, do you have any additional thoughts?
I would say, Maddie, it's a great question, something that I struggled with working in running retail for so long. I would say a really great resource for you is going to be the RunCat scale, which helps people understand, like getting an idea of like, okay, here's a couple things that you may be able to focus on and don't make it complicated and go, you know what, stability refers to like, does your foot feel like it's on the platform and more is not better, less is not better. It's at the end of the day, the shoe needs to feel good on your foot. It shouldn't be bugging you. You know, it should just keep it really simple going. What feels good and get them to think about, oh, when I put this on, here's what I'm feeling. So I think the feedback from Nathan and David going, like David saying, being a good listener is great because that allows you should be reactive. Like listen, but then go, oh, that's what they experience. Okay, let me try to, okay, that's what this means, right? And kind of move from there. But in terms of explaining it, the rockers, the midsole foams, all this stuff, just bring it back to comfort because that's where most people are coming into the store. They want something comfortable. You know, if somebody comes in going, I want the fastest shoe, this, meet them where they're at. So I'd say keep meeting them there and use the language that they understand. But for a lot of people that are newer, just bring it back to comfort. What's comfortable? Because the comfort scale from Ben O'Nig is kind of one of the better things we know. It's not perfect, but about what people tend to do better in. So just go, what feels good for you? What feels comfortable? Going, yeah, you know, stability does it help keep you on the platform? You don't want too rigid, too not, you know, rocker geometry that will kind of roll you forward. That you might like that, you might not. It's not for everybody. Midsole foams, softer cushioning, is it better? Harder cushioning, is it better? It's finding what you like the most is key. So looking for the kind of like that Goldilocks type fit, and don't get too technical, people that are new, because like Nathan said, you will overwhelm them. And so just bring it back to comfort. The RunCat's a great scale. It's available. You can look it up online, and that can be a good way to guide. But I think it also might help guide you because I get it. There's a billion different variables that we know about, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting overwhelmed. Comfort. Bring it back to comfort.
I really like what you were saying there, Matt, about almost in some ways developing mini scripts of plain language explanations of bigger concepts. So I'm going to give a little example of what I mean by that is there's a condition called cervical radiculopathy. And it's where you have a nerve that's coming through your intervertebral foramen. I'm going to use technical words first. Intervertebral foramen, it gets irritated for some reason and it sends like tingling, numbness, or sometimes just pain down into your arm based on which nerve is compressed. A plain language explanation that I've used with a patient is they're like, okay, so what's going on with me? They might say, and I was like, it seems like the symptoms in your arm are coming from your neck. That is my explanation of cervical radiculopathy to start. I don't explain all of those intricacies of how nerves work and why it's in a certain distribution and which muscles it innervates, which skin areas it innervates, which reflexes it impacts. I just say it seems like the symptoms in your arm are coming from your neck, and people are like, oh, that makes sense. So in the same way, if someone asks you like, okay, what even is a carbon plate? Come up with a plain language description. Carbon plates create stiffness so that it can transfer some load in the shoe while you are running or something. I don't know if that's the exact one, but maybe work through some of those main concepts that you wrote and come up with plain language ideas of how to explain it to the people that you'd work with. And then if they're like, wait, tell me more, make sure that you can keep elevating your education, but start with the simple one. Okay, let's move on to our next question. This is from Kev, and this is a pretty interesting question. He says, is there a way to adapt to a super shoe without running in it? And here's the situation. He says, I ran 2:29 marathon. Congrats. That's super fast. In the Alpha Fly 3 last December and a 1:11.5 personal best in the Puma Fast R 3 in the spring. How do I make sure my legs will handle the Fast R for the full distance during my marathon this fall? Currently, he's running in this rotation for his easy runs. He's got the Prime X Strung 2. He also has the New Balance More V5 for long runs and workouts and steady pace stuff. Alpha Fly 3, Prime X version 1, not the Strung version, and the Evo SL.
Bro, if you can handle the Prime X V1, not strong.
Then he says this.
I don't know how to say this, man.
You can handle anything. And then he said, I also bought a pair of Deviate Nitro 3, probably use it as a daily trainer. And then his question is this, are there any of the shoes in that listed that has similar characteristics to the Fast R? Wants to keep the Fast Rs as fresh as possible for the marathon. Is only one key long run enough to create the adaptations necessary? And he also says that he lifts 1 to 2 times a week, averages over 100 miles per week, and is in a 12-week marathon build. So any tips? There's a lot there, but what do you got?
David, why don't you go, since you've been the most recent one to run a marathon? I'm curious to hear. I have my
am I the
thoughts
most
on
recent?
This. Yeah. Yes.
My last marathon was a while ago, man. Okay.
sooner than I think Nathan and I.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna know your body better than anyone else. I think it is worth having one quality long run in this shoe. Absolutely. What's better is more than that, but you're going to have a rough idea. Like, let's say if you're running 100-mile weeks, you already know what it's like to run far. That goes without saying. If you know roughly what your body feels like, let's say in that 18 to 23 mile range, and you're like, okay, like I think I could do this for a marathon. There's a certain feeling you get when you're running that much mileage, and that's more mileage than I've ever run. I've never actually run more than an 80-mile week. I think I've touched 82 maybe. Like I just break. I can't run 100-mile weeks. So kudos to you. You're built different. But if you're running that much, you do get a general feeling of what you can and can't handle. But I will say, have a quality long run where you are using that shoe, probably 18 miles. You'll probably have a decent feeling at that point where it's like, I think I could probably finish that out, but you're going to know that more than anyone else is going to be able to tell you that. It's an internal feeling. And sometimes maybe the shoe just isn't for you for 26.2. And that's a reality that sometimes you just got to face. If there's a certain shoe and you love it and you're just like, I just can't take it that far. And like the only way to really take it that far in that situation is to build up a tolerance with it. And there's no other way really to do that. If you really want to run it in that shoe and you're just not there right now. But usually if you've been running that much, you've got a good feeling of your legs and your body. And if you've run 2:29, you already know what that pace is, right? I mean, what is that? That's give or take like high 5:30s, something like that. So it's like you can do a decent clip for a while. And you could probably split a 114, 115 in training without killing yourself, right? If 111 is your PB. So you could take it a good 15 to 18 and see how it feels. And let's say you run 116, that's a 232 pace, and you recently have a 229 on your legs, you should be able to do that in theory. And you can kind of like have a general feeling of, is this actually going to work for me as I go later into the race? That's the best thing I could possibly say. I feel like there's so many variables that go into a marathon, but if you know what it feels like when you get fatigued and when those legs start to get a little bit more heavy and like things just aren't responding quite the same way anymore, and now you kind of have to put a little extra oomph into your step to keep the same pace at like, it's a weird feeling you get when you cross half marathon and you're still running fast because everything feels heavy and you're just like not really running. It doesn't feel like you're running that fast, but you're running the same pace. And there's a little bit of extra oomph and you just kind of have to like lean into it a little bit more. That feeling when you get there and you kind of keep going and it responds and it's in a way that feels productive that you can actually finish the race in. That's a very long-winded way of saying just try it, you know, but some people know their legs better than others. And sometimes it could just be one long run. If you get one quality 18 to 20 mile run and you're like, yeah, this is it. I like this. There's plenty of pros that do that. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing that if you know your legs and if you have the experience to do it. But if you don't know your legs and you have a hard time scaling it, then yes, you are going to have to scale it if you really want to run in that shoe. So I wish I could give you like this is what you do, but it's just not that simple. Like it's ultimately going to come down to what you feel personally and how you respond to given footwear. I'm done.
Man.
Yeah, you're good, man.
I will say, so I'm gonna answer the questions and I'm gonna answer first question that he didn't quite ask, which is I think the minimum that you need to do in a shoe before you take it for a marathon is at least one long run. Preferably that you do more than that, but at least you need to get one marathon type effort or distance in there to go to decide, can I do it in this shoe or not? Because the answer to the question, can you adapt to a super shoe like the Fast R3, which is very different than a lot of the stuff on the market? Like when Andrew and I reviewed that shoe, I'm like, I don't know what to compare this to because there isn't really anything like that except the previous version. And even that, they're two different shoes. So can you adapt to a stimulus with only one rep? The answer is really no, you can't, right? So when you do your long run, you're basically finding out, can I actually handle this for this distance? You're not adapting to it because you need to actually be exposed to the stimulus repeatedly for your body to actually adapt to it. You might get lucky and be like, oh, these feel great. Long run was great. Awesome. Great. But can you adapt? Is one effort going to create adaptations? Yeah, maybe on a tiny scale, but not enough to actually like, make sure without a doubt you're going to be comfortable with them. So yeah, I would say from our knowledge of how bodies adapt, one rep is enough to create sincere adaptations. It's enough to go, can I actually handle this for a marathon? So yes, do at least one long run. And if you really want to save the shoe, that's great. There's a little risk involved there, but if you get through the long run, you're like, oh, this is awesome, then you should be good to go. But you also need to be ready, like David said, to go, this actually might not be the shoe I need. I might need the Alphafly 3. So be ready to figure out the shoe that's best for you.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to this, but I think I was just going to also reiterate the idea that I don't necessarily think that anyone ever really adapts to their racing shoe if they're only using it for the race and doing like even the 1 to 2 to 3. The physiological like musculoskeletal adaptations happen over long periods of time. Right. So it's more like, is my body resilient enough to handle the shoe that's in front of me? Yeah. And so you should ask yourself, this shoe puts a lot of stress on my medial arch and the front of my knee because of the rocker and this, the narrow platform. Have I ran enough in other shoes that don't have the stability or a heavy rocker that I can handle that? And if you can, like you're probably going to make it. And you should just make sure that you want to run in it for 26.2. I can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen anything that shows like levels of injury rates during the actual marathon due to which shoe people select. I just don't think that's where injuries come from. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to happen for all the other reasons. Yep. And your body was just ready for an injury and you were just putting down a race effort and then it got you. And I don't think I would even just worry too much about this. Honestly, I almost like wouldn't worry
Right.
too much about this question. Like, just
Right.
make sure you want to run 26.2 in it and then go for it.
Yeah,
Especially with like the type of training he's doing.
agreed.
Yeah. I omitted the word adaptation. I'm glad you guys expanded on that because you can't adapt.
Yeah.
Like on a micro scale, sure, but
yeah.
not enough to actually make a big difference in your decision making.
Any adaptations you see, even within the first week, are really more a nervous system, your body kind of figuring out how to move. Like actual musculoskeletal stuff, even cardiovascular, like musculoskeletal stuff takes at minimum, really for more permanent stuff, takes at least 4 to 6, if not 6 to 8 weeks. Cardiovascular stuff takes like 8 to 12, if not longer. To like really make significant stuff can be up to 4 to 6 months. Yeah. So it takes a while.
Mm-hmm. All right. We have our final question for the evening. This is from Brad about shoe rotations. So he says this: you guys talk a lot about the utility of training with multiple shoes. In principle, I understand the concept, but I wonder if you could elaborate on how such a training plan would actually work. Specifically, when you talk about multiple shoes, are you imagining that if, for example, one runs in neutral shoes, the individual should have multiple but different pairs of neutral shoes? Or would the advantages be maximized by alternating soft plush shoes with a firmer or more rigid shoe? In other words, what are the kinds of combinations find optimal? Understanding that there's no set piece answer here. Lastly, what regimen would you recommend in terms of how one alternates between shoes? For example, 3 days in one day another, or what? Again, I know that this isn't a fixed answer, but wondering what we have found works for us. Love to hear your thoughts on these. I'm going to kick this one off really quick, and then I'll open it up. I won't even fully answer the question, but I think our discussion about shoe rotations were born out of a study by Laurent Malzo back in 2015. So this is a study from a little while ago. I have not seen the study replicated. And so we're going off of one study. I'll finish talking about this study and then you should jump in.
Cool? I'm going to comment on the study after you do this, but I'll explain why it'd be like impossible to redo
Matt
this.
is just jumping out of his seat to talk.
So I think what we have to understand about this study is that they did not prescribe a shoe rotation. They were observing runners and then they were seeing who got injured and who did not get injured. And what they found is that people who used their primary shoe for basically less than, 59% of the time, I think was the amount, they had a 38% decrease in injury risk. What they didn't report is how they did that rotation, which shoes they were rotating between. All they knew is that they were using more than one shoe because their primary shoe was less than 59% of the time. And they had a 38% reduction. So we can go into those kind of details of how it works out, but just recognize that from a study perspective, all we really have is the fact that diversifying your shoes may be, and it's definitely a may, because it's one study, may decrease your injury risk. So I'm just going to throw that out there to start. Matt, what did you want to add?
The study sample size was 264, and any of the researchers out there know that trying to get that many for any kind of like follow-up study is a nightmare. So good luck replicating that with that sample size. It's hard. And Malzo, I say this in the nicest way possible, that guy is smart and nuts. Like one of the other studies they did, like he had 800 runners and they had specially made shoes for all of them. It never didn't say, I think it might've been Brooks. He didn't admit it when we had him on the podcast, but like the sample sizes that this guy has used is insane. And you don't see that for biomechanics research or any of the stuff. So like, it's really hard. So we may never see that replicated.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
I will say completely off of the research kick.
Perfect. That's where we wanted to get to, but I think we had to lay the foundation and then talk about some practicalities because it wasn't addressed in the study.
Yeah.
Depending on how serious you take your running, I think first off, if it's very casual, who cares? If you are trying to go as fast as you can and you're using shoes as tools and you're trying to get the max utility out of things, when you look at whether it's professional or collegiate or really any kind of ranked version of running, people do not do all of their efforts in one shoe. And when I say all of their efforts, I mean all of their efforts. We're talking daily running, long runs, long road workouts, tempos, track workouts, and ultimately at the end of the day, racing. Shoes are tools and they help facilitate those things. So when we talk about having different shoe rotations, that doesn't necessarily imply that all three of your shoes on that rotation are neutral. Let's say on your easy day, if you like something with a little bit more stability or a little bit more rocker or something that you can kind of feel quote unquote lazy in and kind of just roll and have a nice rhythmic like flow, that's okay, right? Like you kind of find the feel for the things that you like on the easy days. But on your go fast days, you're going fast. And if that shoe is not the shoe that you go fast in, that's okay. That's why we have a rotation. And so that's when you have a different quiver of things that you can pull for different uses. And the day that you go fast in on your workouts, maybe you want a little bit of extra durability, you want a little bit of extra structure on your foot, you go with the lightweight trainer versus, let's say, a super shoe. Some people do their workouts and their racing in super shoes, and I'm actually okay with that. I think that's fine. I think as long as you dose things appropriately and you're getting a needed stimulus to do your racing, that's totally fine. There's plenty of people that do that and do it very well. But the idea of having a rotation is to have something augment your training so that when race day comes, you are ready and you can actually do it healthy and productive in a way that is your best, right? Because ultimately you want to race at your best and you want to run faster than you've ever run before, in theory, or at least win a race if you're trying to win a race. Because if you're not going for time, some races are purely competition based and it's like, I just want to place, right? There is, and that's still the same goal.
Sometimes it's you just want to finish and not die, which was me on July 4th.
Yeah. And your choice of footwear might reflect that, right? Where it's like, maybe I don't go with the shoe that's as aggressive and quote unquote faster on me, but I choose the one that's a little bit safer that I know I'll be able to finish the race in, especially in the marathon. I mean, I feel like that's one of those like really dicey ones where you kind of almost have to know and try it and have a good feeling about the shoe that's on your foot, because the half, I feel like you can kind of get away with it depending on how experienced you are. But the marathon's just a different beast. But ultimately it's using the shoes as tools to help augment your running. That's really what we mean with the rotation. They don't all have to be neutral. They don't all have to be stability. They don't all have to be lightweight for that matter. If you like running in like a 12-ounce shoe that's just a durable tank for your easy days, by all means do it. Like there's shoes out there for that, and there's people that love them and they sell for a reason. And then if you want to use that same shoe for race day because you like it and it's predictable and it's stable for you, do it. That's fine. Yeah. It just comes down to what you want and what you're looking for.
What do you got, Matt?
There's kind of two different ways I would look at it. I totally agree with David. So if you just have a couple shoes that you like, let's assume, for example, all three of them are just different standard neutral daily trainers. If that's, and you're not looking to run super fast, you're just like, I just want a couple different shoes, maybe two, maybe three, whatever. I would honestly just go switch one day, one the other, and just go back and forth, right? Because while we don't have a ton of evidence on this, we do know that the shoes tend to last a little bit longer if you switch them out and you do have a little bit of recovery time for the foam itself. It does reform a little bit better. So just every other day switching off could be a totally great thing. You can do that if you have a variety of shoes. One's neutral, one's stability, just because you happen to like both. Not you're like, I need this. You'd be like, you know what? If I'm more tired one day, I do neutral shoe for a couple days, or I do the stability shoe, and then maybe for the neutral shoe, it's like, oh, I'm going to go a little quicker, or like it's more comfortable, whatever. I do it on that day. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just have some variation. It might be 2 days of one shoe, 2 days the other. Just vary a little bit. Now, if you're starting to get a little more competitive where you're like, okay, I have a long run, I have these easy ones, I have a workout, then definitely you might want different shoes there, where like your workout, as David said, might be a lightweight trainer, might be a super shoe. It's a shoe that's meant for that faster efforts. Your easy days are going to be that more standard neutral shoe, right? Whatever your normal shoe is, or stability, right? Which in my case, right? Whatever you're normally most comfortable in should be that shoe. And a long run might be a shoe that's more cushioned, or it could also be that same a different super shoe, or just something that makes you feel comfortable over that longer distance might be a good option. I'll give myself an example. Like, I ran a super shoe on a race on July 4th. It's July 6th. So July 4th did a race super shoe. Okay. July 5th, the next day, my wife wanted to do a long run, and that's where I used a different and a more cushioned shoe that I knew I could take for that distance and was going to be more comfortable. The next day after that was the recovery day. My legs were trashed. And so I just took a neutral training shoe that was a little bit softer that just helped me get through the run. I wasn't looking to go fast. I just wanted something comfortable and simple on my feet. So there are 3 different shoes over 3 different days because each run was different, and I'm using the shoes as tools to match those things. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but having even a little variety each day or each run can be great. Now, if you're only running like 3 times a week, then you can get away with maybe wearing the same shoe, 2 different, one after another because you've got some recovery. But especially if you're running every other day and you have a few, I would switch off between them if they're similar categories.
That's great. I know that, Brad, you said that you understand the concept behind this. I know I kind of explained the study, but we didn't really talk about the theory as to why the shoe rotation helped. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of round this out by bringing that back up. And really the theory behind it is running is an extremely repetitive activity, which means that the same stress is being put through your body over and over and over again, thousands to 10,000s of steps of the same motion with the same stress over and over. So the idea is that if you have a different shoe, the shoe is going to, even in a small way, change how those stresses are going through your body. Whether that's because the 2 different shoes have, as you mentioned, maybe one's more stiff and one's more soft. Maybe one has a more rockered platform and one is a little bit more flexible. Even if they're very minute differences, they are going to slightly change how the stress gets put through your body, which could decrease the chance of repetitive breakdown of the same tissue. So that's the theory behind it. So the example I'm going to give, and then we'll wrap up tonight, but I have a friend who just got into running last year. And I did say, I don't know if you have the capacity to get 2 shoes, but I would recommend having 2 different shoes just to run in them. So he was like, well, which one should I get? And I was like, go find 2 shoes that you find comfortable that are just different models and just pick 2. Because I didn't care if one was like a very stiff rocker shoe and one was really soft and maximal and one was minimal. I just wanted them to be different. I would say different enough would have been if someone picked a New Balance 880 and a Ride 18. Those are 2 kind of flagship neutral shoes, but they're different enough because they're going to give a slightly different stimulus. My friend ended up picking a Saucony Endorphin Speed and the Saucony Ride. So he ended up picking 2 shoes from Saucony. He likes running in both of them. He'll take and how he parses it out for his rotation is he'll take the Endorphin Speed on long runs and any workouts, and then he just takes the Ride on everything else, all of his easy runs and recovery runs and all the other daily stuff. So he kind of matches the shoe to what he likes doing in that shoe. But yes, in theory, if the shoes are different, that's going to help change the type of stimulus on your body, but they don't need to be at such extremes that your body can't handle. So go find 2 shoes that you really like, get both of those, and then just pair them with the type of run that you like doing in that one more than the other one that you have. So that would be my practical advice of how to make it happen. I don't think it needs to be super complicated or regimented. I think it should feel intuitive and it should make sense. All right. So thank you all for coming with us on another Mailbag episode. We love getting to interact with you in this way, and we're thankful that you engage with us in such a powerful way that we get to know your questions. We get to hopefully give some helpful responses, and we're just thankful to be sitting in this place where we get to engage with all of you on your questions. So thanks for being with us on this journey, and we'll talk to you next time.